Okay, WAPers, welcome to a Monday edition of WAP. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. It's actually currently the weekend right now. I am in here filming this lecture for you guys second period because I don't want you guys to fall behind. Have my wonderful fiance actually filming for me right now. Allie, thank you. Okay, guys, let us discuss the second half of World War One. We ended last class, we talked about the causes of World War I. The main causes, of course, with militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Now with our alliances, that's really the trickiest part about it, and remember that we really have two alliances that existed previous to the war breaking out. Of course, we have the Triple Alliance, which is Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Italy, of course, however, stays neutral when the war breaks out, and then is aided by the Ottoman Empire coming in and joining Germany and Austria-Hungary to create the Central Powers. Now, on the other side of things, we have our Triple Entente, and that means Russia, England, and France. They're going to be all sticking together when that war breaks out, and then they're going to be added to by the United States, China, and Japan. Once the US, China, and Japan joins Russia, England, and France, that becomes known as the Allies. Those are the Allied powers, right? Okay, so if you look at this map, guys, we truly have a global war. We have fighting and soldiers coming from all over the world to participate in this war. And while most of the fighting is in fact going to take place in Europe, along the Western Front and the Eastern Front, we're actually going to see fighting in a lot of other theaters as well. First of all, the United States, of course, enters the war on the side of the Allies in 1917 and starts sending in troops. Most of those troops are going to come to the Western Front of Europe. But what about Africa, guys? We are going to see a lot of fighting in Africa. You guys know that we had our scramble for Africa that really started with King Leopold in 1875, and then we had the Berlin Conference in 84-85 where they decided how they were going to break up Africa, guys. Well, all of these colonies in Africa now become battle zones for the war. We're going to see the English and the French fighting the Germans in their actual colonies in Africa. All sides, including the British, the French, the Germans, they're going to draft Africans from their respective colonies to fight in the war. So Africa becomes this huge battle zone, guys. In addition, okay, what about the British? The British have a tremendous amount of colonies throughout the world. Obviously, Canada, right? They also have Australia, New Zealand, India. They have all these colonies in Africa as well. Are they going to use these colonies to fight in the war? Of course they are, of course. They're going to draft people, especially from India, to come in and fight against the Central Powers. Most of our Australians, New Zealanders, and Indians are going to come in and fight the Ottoman Empire right over here in Turkey, Anatolia, right? Now, the one that is a little bit interesting on this map is Japan. Japan declares war on Germany in 1914. Why does Japan get involved in this war? That's interesting. It's thinking about it. We know that Japan and Germany were allied in World War II. Why is it different in World War I? Why is Japan getting involved at all, right? In a war that started between Austria-Hungary and Serbia, right? Well, the answer is that Japan is seeking more land. They are doing this for imperialist reasons. They know that Germany is completely bogged down with fighting the war in Europe. They're fighting on both sides, right? They're fighting the English and the French, later the Americans on the Western Front. They're fighting the Russians on the Eastern Front. And while Germany is distracted over here, Japan realizes that it has no way that it can protect its island colonies over here in the Pacific. So the Japanese join the war for the specific purpose of grabbing land away from Germany when they're distracted. So if you look right here, guys, Japan is going to enter for imperialist reasons. Oh, we're frozen. My bad. Japan enters for imperialist reasons, right? And they're going to move down and they're going to seize all of these islands that were controlled by the Germans, and they're going to add them to themselves. My favorite name of one of these German islands that are taken over by the Japanese is modern-day Papua New Guinea. The Germans called it Kaiser Wilhelm Island. Classic German name, right? And the Japanese are going to come in, they're going to seize these lands when the war breaks out, and they are going to demand that they get to keep these islands after the war is finished, and that's going to cause a lot of contention between the Japanese and our Paris Peace Conference nations. Okay, now, what about the Ottoman Empire? We don't speak a lot about the Ottoman Empire in the war. First of all, we're going to have a special group that are drafted by the British called ANZAC. ANZAC stands for Australia and New Zealand Auxiliary Corps, and these are fighters that are drafted by the British to come in. Of course, Australia and New Zealand controlled in the British Empire, and they're going to come to fight for the British over here in what we call the Gallipoli campaign. And this is this massive attack into modern-day Turkey to control the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. And we see some savage fighting there. Actually, this is where Winston Churchill gets a little bit of notoriety fighting for the British, right? But when we talk about the Ottoman Empire, yes, they do their purpose in the war because they stop the Allies from coming in and completely conquering the Mediterranean area. But that becomes really second, guys, to learning about the Ottomans during the war, because this is where we see our second worst example, guys, of genocide in world history. And of course, we talked about this last class, that most of our countries are aided by nationalism during the war. The French are fighting for the French people and the French culture, the British, the Americans the same way. But the Ottoman Empire is an empire, and they have many different cultures and nationalities within their empire, and one oppressed culture is our Christian Armenians. And our Christian Armenians, during the war, are going to be very anti-war. They're not going to want to fight for their Turkish government, and because of this, the Turkish government is going to use the war as a distraction to participate in genocide. And you guys know what genocide is. The killing of people based on race, religion, or ethnicity. We're going to see a lot of similarities, guys, between the Christian Armenian genocide and the Holocaust, because what's going to happen is our Turkish government are going to deport Christian Armenians from their home in modern-day Armenia, and they're going to bring them to Syria, and they're going to put them in concentration camps, and they're going to systematically exterminate them and kill them. And there's going to be about 1 million Christian Armenians killed during this war, and they're going to be heavily condemned for this after the war for war crimes. So that's obviously not good. And so the Christian Armenians, while they're the most famous, are not the only ethnic minorities that are fighting for their independence during World War I. For instance, we have Arabs also living in the Ottoman Empire. And when we say Arabs, they're people coming in from the Arabian Peninsula or close by, and our Arabs want their independence from the Ottoman Empire as well. So our Arabs are actually going to fight for